At the end of another tiring day, a young British English teacher who was in Japan for work was approached by a strange Japanese boy during her commute home. The young woman used to ride a bicycle, and surprisingly, the boy followed her all the way to her apartment complex. When they arrived, he asked for a glass of water, and feeling sorry for the boy, the young woman allowed him to enter. He then met the young woman's roommates, and in the few minutes he spent there, he drew a picture of this particular girl. Alongside the drawing was his name, phone number, and email, and before leaving, he managed to schedule an English lesson with her. The British young woman in question was named Lindsay Hawker, 22 years old, and the Japanese boy was Tatsuya Ichihashi, 28 years old. Lindsay was unaware that this encounter would mark the end of her life, as well as one of the most disturbing Japanese cases of the 2000s. On the morning of March 25, 2007, Hawker had a scheduled shift at 10:50 at the English school where she worked in Ishikawa, Japan. In the late morning, the school, called Nova, noticed the absence of the young British teacher, but they did not express concern. Meanwhile, Lindsay's colleagues contacted the police, but were unsuccessful because none of their reports were forwarded to the city's missing persons department. Only on the next day did the school get in touch with the authorities, as Lindsay missed another scheduled class. To investigate her absence, 2 officers were sent to her apartment, where they quickly found the drawing signed by Tatsuya. The background of this man was investigated, and they discovered that Ichihashi had charges of theft and assault. Around 5:40 p.m. on March 26, those same 2 officers arrived at the suspect's apartment, but due to the lack of a warrant, they did not knock on his door. In fact, they noticed that someone was walking inside the apartment and then did not leave the location. They began knocking on the neighbors' doors, asking if anyone had seen a foreign woman with Lindsay's characteristics, but no one had any information. The 2 officers managed to pass through the apartment next to Ichihashi's, where they saw that there was a bathtub on the balcony. They treated the situation as if it were a hostage operation, but later the same officers reported that they already suspected a more serious crime. After discovering the bathtub, the officers requested backup and a search warrant. In the following hours, 7 more officers from the police department arrived and stood by at the entrance of the apartment. 2 officers near the door were taken by surprise when Ichihashi himself came out of the apartment barefoot, carrying a backpack. Immediately, he reacted by fleeing the scene. One of the police officers managed to grab his backpack, but Ichihashi got rid of it and continued running. At that moment, the police officers were spread throughout the apartment complex but had difficulty communicating with each other about the suspect's location. He escaped by leaping down the stairs until reaching the ground floor, where he disappeared. A massive search ensued until he was once again found wandering through the city's alleys, this time wearing a pair of possibly stolen sports shoes. However, the lack of communication among the police once again allowed the suspect to easily escape within the vast network of buildings. In his backpack, the officers only found his workout clothes. After the failed pursuit and the suspect's escape, the officers finally entered Ichihashi's apartment, where they quickly located Lindsay Hawker's body inside the bathtub they had seen earlier. Her head had been shaved by the criminal, and during a search of the house, a plastic bag containing strands of hair was found in the kitchen. The area was then isolated, and the body was sent for autopsy. Lindsay had rounded bruises around her right eye, indicating that she had been beaten. Various contusions were found on the rest of her body, suggesting a prolonged attack. It's likely that she collided with furniture in the apartment during her attempt to escape. Despite Lindsay being tall and practicing martial arts, Ichihashi managed to attack and overpower her. According to the coroner, Lindsay had her trachea crushed, pointing to this injury as the cause of death. Strangulation lasted approximately 3 minutes, and she was also sexually assaulted. The DNA found in Lindsay's body was confirmed to be Ichihashi's, and thus he was officially declared the murderer. While the criminal was on the run, Investigators managed to access the security camera footage from the last location where the two were seen alive. It was a local cafe where they ordered drinks. She was wearing a long white coat and he was dressed in dark and minimalist clothes. When the employees were questioned, it was revealed that they arrived at the cafe just before 9 a.m. and left 45 minutes later. It appears that Lindsay taught English right there to Ichihashi, and then they were seen leaving and getting into a taxi that took them to the criminal's apartment. Authorities knew she had a shift to cover at 10:50 a.m. at the language school, indicating that she had followed him for a justifiable reason. It would later be discovered that Ichihashi informed her that he didn't have enough money to pay for the lesson at the moment, and asked her to follow him to the apartment, where he would have the remaining payment. After getting out of the taxi, Lindsay had asked the driver to wait for her as she planned to go straight to Nova School. However, after the delay, the driver ended up leaving the place. Investigators believed that Lindsay was attacked as soon as she entered the apartment, and her wrists were tied with bands, and she was brutally violated. In the following days, findings indicated that the victim remained alive until around 2 or 3 a.m. on March 26 when she was manually strangled. A few hours earlier, to destroy evidence of the crime, Ichihashi went to a store and bought compost sand and soil, along with a product commonly used by Japanese people to decompose garbage. He placed her body in the bathtub and poured the chemical and sand. In the early morning, he dragged the bathtub onto the balcony of his apartment. This was confirmed by the neighbors themselves, who reported hearing sounds of something metallic being dragged. In that phase of the search, investigators received clues that Ichihashi was hiding in the Chato Hotel, East Tokyo. About 20 police officers attempted the arrest, but they were unsuccessful in locating him. Numerous posters were spread throughout the city, and within hours, the entire Japan knew who Tatsuya Ichihashi was. The criminal was placed on the national wanted list. Japanese authorities were aware that he would do anything to evade the police radar, and this became even more evident in the coming months. In the first weeks after the crime, Lindsay Hawker's family remained restless, mainly due to the silence from Japanese authorities. Lindsay was a native of Coventry, England. Her parents, Bill and Julia Hawker, were ordinary British people who provided everything for their daughter's best development. She graduated from the local King Henry VIII School and later joined the University of Leeds, where she studied biology. She graduated with honours in 2006, when she decided to change her plans. She chose to teach English in Japan, applying to work at a school called Nova, which was then the largest private English school in Japan. She moved to Ichikawa in the Chiba Prefecture in 2006, where she found accommodation with 2 other foreign teachers who also attended the Nova school. Over the months, she frequently contacted her family through email, phone calls, and Skype. However, her last contact was with her boyfriend via email, where she informed him of meeting a strange Japanese guy that expressed a desire to have English lessons. She mentioned that the boy approached her on the train close to the region where she lived. Initially, Ichihashi questioned if she was his English teacher, referring to Nova School. She said she didn't recognize him, but he insisted. Then Ichihashi continued to stay by her side even after leaving the train. During the journey to her home, Lindsay grabbed a bicycle, and the boy followed her. Incredibly, even with 2 roommates present, Ichihashi never felt hesitant to proceed with his intentions. Now, let's talk about Tatsuya Ichihashi. He grew up in the Chiba Prefecture, the son of successful parents, his mother being a dentist and his father a doctor. He would eventually graduate from Chiba University, majoring in horticulture. His criminal history began at the age of 22 when he assaulted and robbed a man. However, the case was resolved outside the court by his family. According to Japanese sources, he had interests in violent manga and developed a strange obsession with maintaining good physical fitness. To achieve this, he was constantly cycling or running. In 2005, he graduated from the university but spent the next 2 years living off the monthly allowance from his parents. Until the age of 28, Ichihashi had never worked and was described as a solitary boy obsessed with his own physical appearance. Nearly a year after the criminal's escape, authorities had few leads, mostly consisting of sightings in areas known for the presence of homosexuals in Japan. It is believed that Ichihashi used to have sexual encounters with men around the time of the crime. Over the months, around 140 police officers from the city of Ishikawa were assigned to the case. However, by October 2008, due to the sluggish progress of the case, investigators began suggesting that the criminal might have committed suicide. In response to this, Lindsay's father expressed frustration with the pace of the investigations, and tried various ways to keep his daughter's case fresh in the minds of Japanese authorities and the media. He even appeared on television, urging his daughter's killer to surrender. 2 years after the murder, authorities created a life-sized poster of the criminal and spread it throughout Japan in an attempt to locate him. In January 2009, the reward for information leading to the arrest of the killer was massively increased by the National Police Agency of Japan, from 1 million yen to 10 million yen. A few months later, an aesthetic clinic in Nagoya contacted authorities to report that Ichihashi had undergone plastic surgery. Doctors found it strange and soon discovered that the criminal was attempting to change his appearance crudely. However, he was only identified after the surgery and when he had already fled the region. Nevertheless, the police managed to release photographs of how he looked after the surgeries. He had his nose raised, added a fold to his eyelids, and completely removed 2 moles from his face. The criminal also underwent lip-thinning surgery. With the shared images, 2 new witnesses came forward to report sightings of Ichihashi. One was an employee of a construction company in the city of Osaka, where apparently the criminal had worked for 14 months to raise money for the surgeries. The second witness was also an employee of a ferry company, reporting seeing the criminal in the Osaka region. Investigators then located him in Osaka as he tried to board a ferry to Okinawa. Upon his arrest, he denied the charges and pleaded not guilty. Several days of interrogation passed with the criminal unwilling to speak. Eventually, Ichihashi finally confessed to the crime but claimed he did not intend to kill Lindsay and even said he tried to revive her. His lawyers told the media that the criminal was threatened with the death penalty if he didn't confess and pointed to stress and exhaustion as tactics used to extract the confession. In any case, Ichihashi was soon charged with murder, corpse abandonment, and rape. The case's notoriety continued to grow, with many newspapers and citizens calling for the death penalty, although this is rare in Japan. Lindsay's parents even traveled from England to Japan to express gratitude for the case's resolution. In the 2011 trial, Ichihashi was brought to the Chiba District Court, where he admitted to strangling Lindsay Hawker to prevent her from screaming while assaulting her. Before the verdict, the victim's family requested the death penalty, but the court opted for a life sentence, stating that the death penalty would be inappropriate. They argued that his clean record and age made him someone potentially rehabilitatable someday. Upon being sent to prison, the criminal spent his free time writing a book titled Until I Was Arrested, detailing the case. In the early pages, the convicted murderer admits to indeed taking Lindsay's life. According to the criminal, he wrote the book as a gesture of remorse for his actions. Throughout the pages, he describes attempting to change his appearance by cutting his own lower lip and making 2 incisions in his cheek with a utility knife. At no point does the criminal detail his crime, but he shares how he felt paranoid during his time on the run. He claimed that after fleeing from the police in the apartment complex where he lived, he supposedly tied his nose with a thread and needle to make it narrower. He also mentioned that thanks to the masks Japanese people usually wear in spring, it became easier for him to avoid eye contact and store cameras. Somehow, even as a fugitive, Ichihashi explained that he managed to find a job to raise money for his 2 plastic surgeries. However, even after altering his appearance, he was horrified when he saw that television stations were broadcasting his photos after the surgery. According to him, his heart raced at the prospect of his imminent arrest. In the end, Ichihashi offered the money earned from the book to Lindsay's family, but they rejected the offer. The media often compared the case to the tragedy involving the British woman Lucy Blackman, who was killed and dismembered in 2000, but the prosecution couldn't connect the cases. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the Lindsay Hawker case. The twists and turns of this story are both intriguing and deeply unsettling, shedding light on the darker side of human interactions. As we conclude, we invite you to share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our future investigations. Until next time.